I thank the chair, and thank you all so much. Been a stimulating conversation. It just seems to me that we're going to have to really grapple with what are the parameters of protecting privacy and controlling the use of this technology. And one of the traps I hope on my side of the aisle particularly we don't fall into is continuously citing the false IDs. Because if we make the argument this technology is no good because there are a lot of false IDs, that may be true today and the concern is legitimate. But technology's nature is it will improve. So what will we say when it becomes 95% accurate? Then what? Are we conceding the argument that, well, then you can use it with impunity? I would certainly argue, irrespective of its accuracy, there are intrinsic concerns with this technology and its use. And maybe we have to look at things like opt-in and opt-out, where you actually require the consent of anybody whose face is at issue to be able to transfer it to another party, whether you're government or not government. Mr. Parker, you were talking about primarily being concerned about how government uses facial recognition technology. But do we have any reason to believe the private sector might also generate some concerns?
I'm sure, and that's why we need to establish best practices about how it's used, particularly in any applications where there's any kind of serious consequence for errors, for example.
Errors. Well, let me give you a different example. So IBM got 1 million photos from a photo hosting site called Flickr. It sent the link to that database, 1 million faces, to Chinese universities. Now, that wasn't the government doing it. It was a private entity, and it wasn't about accuracy. It was about an entire data set going to a foreign adversary who has a track record of actually using this technology to suppress and persecute minorities. For example, Uyghurs, to wit. We know they're doing that. So might you have any concern about a company like IBM engaging in that kind of behavior in transferring an entire data set to Chinese universities with close ties, obviously, to the Chinese government?
Yes, certainly, and I think we've seen this reflected in U.S. government policy, too, which has established a restriction on exports to a number of Chinese companies, particularly those that are developing this technology that we're talking about.
Ms. Whitaker, your views about that?
Well, I think that highlights one of the issues that trying to implement consent raises, which is that those photos are already on Flickr. Those are photos that someone may have put on Flickr during a very different internet, when facial recognition at scale was not a technical possibility the way it is today. And they are now being scraped by IBM. They're being scraped by many, many other researchers to comprise these data sets that are then being used to train these systems that may be erroneous, that may target our communities, and that may violate our civil liberties. So where we ask for consent, how consent could work, given that we have a 20-year history where we've clicked through consent notifications without reading them as a matter of habit to get to the core technical infrastructures of our lives, remains a big open question. And I think we would need to be able to answer that.
Certainly, I think we could agree, could we not, that whether I clicked consent for Flickr or any other entity to have access to and within reason use my photo, I never contemplated having that photo transferred to a foreign government or to a university with close ties to a foreign government.
Yes, or to have a corporation use it to train a system that they might sell to law enforcement in ways that targets your community. Right. There's a lot of things we did not consent to.
Well, it just seems to me, Madam Chairman, that this being the third hearing where we all have expressed concern about the zone of privacy and, frankly, informed consent about citizens or non-citizens whose data, in this case their face, may be used and how it may be used and transferred to a third party. We've got some work to do in figuring out the rules of engagement here and how we protect fundamental privacy rights of citizens, unless we want to go down the road of expanding and transforming the whole definition of the zone of privacy. And that's a very different debate. But it seems to me that we can't only concede that technology will drive the terms of reference for privacy. Thank you, Madam Chairman.